Okay, so we want to take our custom grip that we scanned and make it so we can 3D print it. So we're going to go to Tinkercad, is where we're at right now. We're going to create new design. And we'll import up here. We'll import our STL file that we've trimmed and gotten ready. Let's see. Here we go. And all this should be hopefully fine. It's going to import just the same size that it was when we scanned it. It'll take a minute because it's a pretty big file, but as soon as it comes in, we're gonna basically figure out a way to separate it into two halves and have it so that the wood piece of the paddle can fit into it, sort of like a puzzle piece, I guess. I'm just waiting here. Let's see. Should be any second. Here it is. Okay, so this is my grip. It's a pretty subtle grip. I didn't go for a lot here, but you can see a couple finger indentations. So you're gonna drag over this this box, which is a hole. So if we put it into here, it'll make a hole. And what we want to do is we want to shrink it down to 6 millimeters tall. And then we'll go for, let's say 12 millimeters wide. That's about a ½ inch. And we want to just make sure it's extra long. So I'm going to make this like, I don't know, 120 millimeters. So we've got roughly ½ inch, that's 12 millimeters, about ¼ inch tall. That was our 6, and then plenty long to go through. Then we're also going to grab another box. And we're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to bring it down to 6 tall. And then we'll just make this plenty wide in both directions. And we're going to group these two together. So we're going to just highlight both of those. Come up to here where it says group. Click on that. And now they'll move as a single unit. We're going to bring that over and we're going to raise it up. So to raise it up, we're going to grab this little black guy here, the black triangle, and we're going to raise it up, and we're just eyeballing this for now. We want to get this, first of all, we want to make sure, and I can use my arrow keys too. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm clicking over to get that hopefully lined up right in the center. And I just lost it here. I'm just going to make sure it looks like it's going through the center in both directions. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good right through the middle. And now I'm going to back this down because you can imagine how the wood piece of the paddle, the handle is going to come up through the center, and then it's going to curve out. So if we just had this thin guy going all the way through, it would not allow the curved piece of the paddle, and it actually starts to flare out like this. It wouldn't allow that to actually happen. So that's the goal of this guy here, is to actually allow that wood part of the paddle to flare out. And again, we're just going to eyeball it. I'm just going to bring it down. Better safe than sorry. I'm going to bring it down a little bit, maybe more than I need, to about, let's see, I'm going to keep going actually a little farther. About there. So now I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to group together again, and you'll see what happens here. Boom. There it is. That looks okay. It's going to be a little bit tricky, I think, to get everything lined up perfectly. So do your best. Looks, I think, pretty good. So now the wood core, the blade of the paddle, will be able to slide down in there. But rather than actually just try to slide it down perfectly and print all of this as one piece, we're actually going to separate this into two halves. Before you do that, if you want to trim anything else off, like if you have too much material up here and you just want to trim it off, you can also just like come in here and trim that flat. I'm gonna call it okay as is, so I'm just gonna delete that. I'll just go with what I have here. I'm gonna take this. Everything's been grouped together. I'm gonna do a copy paste, Control C, Control V, and now I've got these two guys. Then I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to basically cut off the entire bottom of this thing. So I'm going to just make this plenty big. And again, eyeballing it here, I'm going to decrease the height so that hopefully I can get it like right perfectly in the middle of everything. Does that look right? That looks pretty good, I think. I think that's about perfect. And now, before I do anything else, I need to see, okay, that's exactly 12 millimeters tall. I'm going to copy that and paste that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, except now I want to keep the bottom and ditch the top. So I'm going to raise this up exactly the height of the other one over here. So that's 12. I'm going to raise it up 12. So you can either just try to get it perfect here. You see this box over here that's telling me how high it went up. I can also just type in 12 there. So now if I look at these, where one cuts off, the other one, or where one starts, the other one leaves, basically, if that makes sense. So now I can group those, and I can group these. Uh-oh, let me undo that. I didn't go up high enough. So I went up high enough, but I need to extend the top of the box higher, if that makes sense. It didn't quite catch everything. There's that little island right there. So I'm being careful there to leave the bottom of the box in the same place, but to make sure that I get everything on top. Okay, and now we'll group those. Great. I'm going to, let's see, this is, rather than try to drag this down and eyeball it, which I could maybe do, see if this works. Negative 12, right? Because we had it 12 up. I want to make sure that's on the exact right plane. It's hard to tell. I think it's pretty good. It should be. It should be. So, but let me do. This is going to be a little bit better. So instead of dragging it down, I'm just going to leave it right there. So I'm gonna take this guy. I'm going to export these separately. So I'm going to make a copy here. Just Control C, and then actually I'm gonna just cut it. Control X. So I'm cutting that out. I'm going to go back to my Tinkercad dashboard, create new design, and I'm going to paste it in there. Wait for it. There it is. Okay. So now I have, there is an actually easier way to do this too, but let's just keep going. So there is the one side of the paddle. I can export that as an STL. And there it is, neat Bruticus. And now I can go get the other one, which was this guy. Okay, and I can export that. The other thing that I can do is, instead of separating those two, I realized if I had the other one here, let's just see if I can, yeah, here it is. I'll bring it back. Instead of separating them, it's a lot easier, I forgot about this, to just say that we're going to export the selected shape. So make sure that you've selected one, export it as an STL, and then select the other, export that as an STL. Okay, so there I go. Incredible. It's going to be easiest if we just rename these the right thing before we export them. But I'll remember that these are my two guys here, one half and the other half. And then from here, we're going to go into Eiger next.